Good morning, Michael. I'm very happy to have the opportunity to speak with you this morning about Meher Baba and my experience with Meher Baba. As a matter of fact, how I came to Meher Baba. Um, I am from Guyana in South America, on the northern coast of South America, and it's part of the Caribbean region. And I've come from a family that was very, very, very religious, super religious, and not just your tradition, your traditional religions, all the born again Christian type of religions. And I remember I used to hate Sundays because you couldn't have any kind of, you know, music with a beat, so to speak. It had to be hymns and so on. And I came also from a family of musicians. My father's relatives all played musical instruments and that kind of thing. But when it came to the whole question of God, no, I was about to say we were so religious we didn't go to church. We had our church services at home, and one would imagine that within such an environment, everything would be um, perfect. But I was always uncomfortable about it because the elders would say one thing and do something else. And I never felt like I was part of for some reason, I didn't feel I was part of that environment really. So as I grew up, and then I left home and went to Canada to study. I and read, met people and read quite a bit. And one of the things that struck me in a presentation I heard about God was that we don't know who God is or what he looks like, or um, nobody has ever really seen God. And as a matter of fact, the person said, "Oh, God could be a cockroach for all you know." But what is important is, is having the faith in that God. So I just never bothered much, and I lived my life. I partied and, you know, went to school, finished, started to work. And as part of my working life, I worked in the same building in Switzerland at the United Nations headquarters with um, a Trinidadian young lady that I had just met. This was about 1979, 1980. Her name is Heather Welch. And Heather invited me to her house for lunch. And from the time I entered the house, there was something strange about it. It wasn't a house, it was just a studio in Geneva. There was something strange about it. There was this picture of this man, and he would be looking at me and looking right through me. And as I moved about the room, his eyes would be following me. And everywhere I went, there was a picture of this Meher Baba. I went to the bathroom. He was in the bathroom. He was everywhere. The eyes were just boring into me. And I also got this out of this world sort of feeling. I didn't know what it was. And I thought, she's dealing with some sort of strangeness that I'm not accustomed to. So I couldn't take it anymore. And I said, Heather, who is this man? Is your father, is he your father or whoever? And she said, no, that's Meher Baba. I said, Meher Baba? Meher Baba? Well, who? And she said, um, he's my spiritual master. And I said, Master? What do you mean by that? But what do you mean by that? She says, well, I'm a Baba lover, and, I know I adhere to his teachings, and he's the avatar of our age. Well, at this stage, I thought she was totally cuckoo because I had never heard the word avatar before. And I said, Avatar? What's an avatar? And she said, okay, usually have difficulty explaining how I feel about Meher Baba. But I know he's my guide, he's my master, and I love him. But I'll introduce you to my boss, who is much more articulate in explaining these things to me, to people. And maybe, you might you might get the answers that you're looking for. So the boss was Arsenio Rodriguez. He was we all worked in the same building. He was with UNEP, I was with UNITAR. And but we didn't know each other. And she told Arsenio about me. And he and Julie invited me over to dinner one night. And I arrived in Arsenio's house. And there in the entrance hall of Arsenio's house is another picture of this man. But this time, the eyes were like pools, and they're just looking at you like this. And then you get that strange feeling that something is going on that you're not familiar with. In Arsenio's house, all over again, there were pictures of Meher Baba. And I felt, a bit uneasy. But they were not in a hurry to talk about Baba. They were talking about everything else until I just couldn't take it. And I said, who's this man? Why do you have so many pictures of him? And Arsenio told me, about he told me that he explained to me what was a spiritual master. And he also told me his experience with Meher Baba, and he said that if it weren't for Meher Baba, he wouldn't be where he was at that point in time. And we talked quite a bit about some of Baba's lives, his works, and some of the things that he did. And he sent me home with 2 books and a photograph. One of the books was the discourses, and the other one was one of the life and works of Meher Baba. And I think it was by Jean Adriel. And a picture. And he said that if there's anything you want to know more about Meher Baba, you can read that, and then then we can talk. So when I got home, just before I got into bed, I took the books out, and I looked at the discourses. I put them aside because I didn't have any time for philosophy, what I thought was philosophy at that time. And I looked at the other book, and I thought, interesting. The picture looked good enough. So I put the picture in the other book aside, and I started to read the one about the life and works of Meher Baba. At 5 o'clock in the morning, I closed the book, got a couple of hours of sleep to go to work the next day. I was so taken with the Christ-like approach and the teachings and that sort of thing. So I went to work, and life continued. But I noticed that whenever Arsenio had visitors passing through Geneva, Baba visitors, he would invite me. I would be on the guest list. And in that way, I met a whole lot of people. That's where I met Anne Maureen, Dr. Anne, and a lot of the Swiss babblers, but I didn't know who they were at the time. And as far as I was concerned, these were just crazy post-hippie people, you know. You know. So one of the questions I asked them, I was very almost belligerent about their beliefs. And one of the questions I asked them was that if this man is who you say he is, then why is it I had to come all the way from Guyana to Switzerland to hear about him? I should have been hearing about him since I was born, you know. And the thing is, what I felt coming from them, all of them, is a certain kind of, it wasn't not just compassion. I recognize it now to be a love, so Baba's love. They accepted you exactly as you were. There was no question of arguing and so on. They just gave you the answers the way they knew it. And I was quite impressed with all of that. Then later on, I left and went to Paris to work with UNESCO. And Heather, she and Arsenio and those were always going to India and coming back, you know, and they just looked totally spaced out when they returned. And I was always curious as to what was going on when they went there. And while I was in Paris, Heather passed through Paris to pick up her plane to Mumbai and overnighted at my house. And at that time, I was having some problems with my youngest brother, who was living with me, and he was growing marijuana in my house, and you know, he was just going off the reel. And at the same time, too, I was quite unsettled. I was getting some strange nightmares and stuff like that. And she said when she goes to Meherazad, she will speak with some of the Mandali and see what words of advice they would have for me. So she came back 3 weeks later and she brought the book of prayers, and she said, this is from Erich. And he says that if at any time you feel upset or uneasy or anything like that, you just read the Master's Prayer. And it would be as if you were under a mosquito net and the mosquitoes are, flitting all around. They'd never be able to touch you because you would be fully protected. So there was that. She also had a locket, and inside of the locket was a strand of Meher Baba's hair. And she said, this is from Mehera. She sends this for you. And she says, if you wear this all the time, Baba will never leave you. Baba will be with you all the time. And so I did what she said because, I felt there was no harm in doing it. And I said to her, this is a fascinating place that you go to. Next time you go, I'm gonna come with you. A year later, we're now in 1984. A year later, she calls, Jocelyne, I'm going to Meherazad. Remember the last time we spoke, you said you wanted to come? Well, I'm leaving on such and such a date, and I need to know, are you going to come? Just like that. She's very businesslike. And I said, give me a chance. Let me think about it. So while I thought about it and then called her back and said, okay. But I had to make a quick decision because she had already started making arrangements. So I told her, okay. Now, one of the things that happened was that when I told my friends that I was going to India, some of them were concerned. They said, you've never been out there before. What you going out there for? All by yourself, and so on. And one of my friends used to go to a psychic, Madam Jeddah. And she said, why don't you go to Madam Jeddah and see what Madam Jeddah has to say to you about this trip? Okay, I was persuaded to go to Madam Jeddah. And Madam Jeddah looked into her cards and she told me all sorts of things, but she never saw the trip. And at that point, I was going because I had my ticket and everything. And she went into the cards again and still didn't see it. But she said to me, the fact that I don't see the trip does not mean you're not going. It just simply means I don't see it. When Heather passed through and I told her that's what happened, she said, oh, yes, she wouldn't see that. And I said, why? She said, because Meherazad is way ahead of that. Meherazad is not in that realm. She said, when you go to India, they'll explain it to you. to you. Now, she had told me, give me all the instructions in those days. When you got into Mumbai, you sat and waited till 3 o'clock, and then you went to you took a taxi to the domestic, you went to the domestic station, the domestic airport, and then you took a flight to Pune and all that sort of, which is what I did. I got into Pune, and I'm waiting on my luggage to come on the thing. And somebody taps me on the shoulder. You're going to Meher Baba? I said, yes, who are you? He said, I'm the taxi driver. I'm here to take you. So I got a taxi right away. I didn't have to go and look for a taxi. Heather told me later that she had told him when she passed through that her friend was coming and he must look out for her. She didn't give him a date or anything, but he was there. And he put me in the taxi and, oh, I missed out something. I have to backtrack. So, leaving Paris for the trip, I had already got my ticket and I made arrangements, for time off for my job and that sort of thing. No, I'm the sort of person, I traveled a lot, and I didn't spend much time packing. I packed 2 or 3 hours before I left. But on this particular trip, say I had to leave on Wednesday, on Monday morning, I was up bright and early and something told me, start packing. I packed, and then later on in the morning, I started to get telephone calls from my friends who knew I was going to be traveling. And they told me, well, there's a general strike in Paris at this time. You'd better check and see if you're going to be traveling. Everybody was on strike. There was a lot of industrial action. And later on, I called the airlines to find out. And they said, oh, no, it's only the domestic pilots that would be striking. You were fine. Then around midday, they called me to say, oh, no, everybody is on strike. And if I wanted to catch my flight, I had to leave that very day. So I ran home, made all the necessary arrangements, ran home, couldn't get a taxi, went out on the street, hailed one with all my luggage, couldn't get too far in the taxi. The taxi put me down at a metro station and I had to find my way to the airport. Well, from there, everything went smoothly. Once I got on the plane, I got to Frankfurt and so on. And that is when I followed the instructions as to how to get there, how to get to Pune, and so on. So I'm now in the taxi going from Pune. We arrive at the trust office, and as I I'm coming out of the taxi, getting my luggage. Who comes up? The bus from Meherazad comes up, and who steps off? Heather. She looks at her, she looks at me, she says, "What you doing here?" Because I was not supposed to be there at that time. But I found that people were very helpful. John Connor, I remember, was one of those. He picked up my luggage and took it inside. I didn't know who he was, but I knew I met him afterwards, and so on. And while I was being registered, there was Pat and Irene who were there at the time. I was being registered, and they asked me, "How long are you going to be staying?" I said I'd be here for about three days, because I told her that I didn't want to have anything to do with her and her people. I just wanted to see what she was doing, and then I was off sightseeing in India. So I told them 3 days, and they looked at me. They said, 3 days? I said, what do you think it is at all? You think don't have anything else to do but to be hanging around a place like this for longer than 3 days? I remember them telling me, you will learn that when you come to a place like this, you're brought here. And you stay here for as long as you are you're supposed to stay, and you leave only when you are supposed to leave. Now, I thought they were crazy. Anyway, I registered that, and we took a rickshaw into the Pilgrim Center. After I rested a bit, Heather said, okay, but let me take you and show you around. So she showed me places around the center, and then we went up the hill. And she went into the samadhi, and I marched in behind her. And I stood up and looked at everybody coming and bowing down to this marble stone. I couldn't, it wasn't my thing. And I remembered that Arsenio had said that any questions you have for Meher Baba, if you ask them in the samadhi, you will get answers. So when I marched in there, I said, Meher Baba, all I want to know is, who are you? Where you come from? What is all this fanaticism about? And I went on in that vein. And, what does all of these things mean? Parvati Garb, you name it. And I marched out and went down. The next day, they were going to Meherazad. And I was ill, and I stayed in the Pilgrim Center. And by afternoon, but one of the things that really struck me was the caring of the people around you. You're a total stranger, but right away you feel that love, and a genuine kind of caring, with Heather Nadel, and the whole Gary Kleiner, the whole side that were there, and I was quite impressed with that. So I went in the afternoon. I went down to the back of the Pilgrim Center, and I sat on the stairs and just contemplating my surroundings. And this girl comes. She introduced herself. Her name is Meherazad. And she says, "Hi, what's your name?" Well, I was in no mood to speak to anybody, any of these weird people. And she says, "What's your name?" I told her. "Where are you from?" I told her. um, how did you know about Meher Baba? I said, I don't know about Meher Baba. I, I don't know anything about Meher Baba. Or something like that, or how long you were a Baba lover, or something like that. I said, I don't know anything about Meher Baba. That didn't stop her. She said, you know, we have a library in the center. If there's something anything that you want to know about Meher Baba, you can find books there to read. I said, fine. And then I got up and I went to the room. I'm lying there and she knocks on the door. Oh, hey, Jocelyne, I just went and I was checking in the library. Here's a nice book that you know you might be interested in, and you can read and learn a little bit about Meher Baba. And then I figured I didn't have anything else to do, so I started to leaf through the book. And lo and behold, as I leafed through the book, all the questions I had asked in the tomb were revealed to me. And I thought to myself, there's something in this that there's a lot of it in this that doesn't meet the eye. Okay. The next day, we went to Meherazad again. As I stepped off the bus, Erich comes forward. Oh, Jocelyne, Jocelyne, come on here, Jocelyne. Lovely to meet you, Jocelyne. I know you have a lot of questions for me. Let's go in here and jostle. And I said to Heather, what did you tell these people about me? How can he be speaking to me in that manner? She says, I don't know. I told him is that my friend was coming and she wanted to have a chat with you. So we went in there, and when I thought I would have a one-on-one with Erich, it was a room full of people. And I'm asking, these questions. The same question one question was about how come the same one that I had to come all this way to know about Meher Baba. Another question was, I told him I look around the room and I only see people like you and, these Westerners and so on. How come they have gods too? How come, Baba doesn't mention anything about them? He mentions it about Jesus Christ and so on. And, he explained to me that, Baba was everywhere, he was in everything, and, like some of these people might refer to themselves as God, but they're all part of Baba. And that's whatever he said kind of quieted my fears. And there were lots of toing and froing between us. Then I was going somewhere, and I overheard Mani speaking to some children, and it resonated with me because it reminded me of something that happened within my family and my father and grandfather and so on. And I checked myself. I met also Arnavaz, and it was Arnavaz that explained to me the significance of bowing down in the tomb, and this bit about the sanskaras, and some of the explanations that Baba gave them. But it was so gently done, so matter of fact and very softly done. I listened. Then I met Rano, the artist. It's Rano, right? And she took me and showed me all her paintings and explained to me the painting about the creation and all that sort of thing. So I spent time with her. And then into Baba's room. And they showed me the Baba's face on the tree and all that sort of thing. Now, the thing is, as all of that was happening, I felt like I was on a double dose of marijuana, because you just feel as if you get higher and higher and higher, and it was almost as if you were no longer in the body. It was a really new and strange sensation. It was a really new and strange sensation for me. But that's what happened. Then later on, I was told, okay, let's go and meet Mehera on the porch. So I went with her to Mehera. We just said hello. Nothing significant that I can remember. And I went and sat down very quietly, minding my business. Then Mehru said to me, Jocelyne, Mehera would like you to sing a song. And I pretended I didn't hear because that is not what I was there for. I was there to perform because I wasn't a performer. Then she asked a second time after a while. And I still didn't adhere to what she was saying. By the time that the third request came through, Heather was behind me. She said, Jocelyne, you got to sing. You have to sing something. Well, I'm from the Caribbean. I like Caribbean songs. And a lot of them are very suggestive. And there was not one that I could think of that I could sing there. So Heather said, well, you know Belafonte, because you grow up with Harry Belafonte songs. Sing a Belafonte. So I bursted out. Deo, Deo, daylight come and me one go home. Day, Isa day, Isa day, Isa day. Daylight come and me one go home. And from the first note, the whole atmosphere changed. Manny was up dancing a jig. And those who had musical instruments were accompanying me in the musical instruments or clapping. And I glanced at Mehera. She was doing like this, and she seemed to be quite happy. And when that was finished, they told me that was Harry Belafonte was one of Baba's favorite singers. Harry Belafonte and Paul Robeson. And when they lived in Manzili Mim, he would have them play Belafonte tunes over and over and over again. They did like that on the pickup, the gramophone. And they were so happy, and one of them said, oh, and there was one about a coconut. And so I sang that, and we had a little party there. Now, by the time all of that happened, I got to backtrack, because that morning, I went to the Samadhi before going to Meherazad, and I walked in. And the tomb was cleaned, and there was the cloth on the tomb. And I walked in behind Heather and walked out. And there was a lady at the door who said to me, Jocelyne, did you bow down to Meher Baba? And it was it came like it hurt. It was like a rebuke, like when you're small, your parents rebuking you, that sort of thing. And I was quite upset about it, because I was told that nobody ever asks you anything. You just do what you feel like doing when you're there. So now, on the return, after that day of total, it wasn't excitement. It was more like awakenings. I went into the tomb that night, and it was totally transformed. Apparently there was a wedding on at the time, and the whole tomb was full of red roses, the entire tomb. And the aroma coming from that tomb was intoxicating. And I went in and stood up, and it was as if a magnet just pulled my knees down to the ground. And I bowed down there, and I can't remember, but I remember kneeling there and talking to Baba and so on. And it made me so weak, when I came out, I could hardly walk. And then I looked around, nobody was paying me any attention. It was just what I was feeling inside. And all of a sudden, I just got a whole lot of sensations, like they talked about happiness and joy and bliss. You know, you get that feeling. It's a very heady feeling, and at the same time, I don't know how to describe it. I was just totally happy. I went around hugging everybody and kissing everybody and all that sort. And all the Baba lovers there would say, "Oh, that's Baba's love." And I also found that I realized at that moment when I came out of the tomb that all the experiences I've ever had, because I had done some traveling before, like in Africa, Mexico, different places, and I did have some form of experiences. Um, all of these experiences led me to that point. I had to have those experiences before I reached there. And one of them was when I realized that all of this that they used to teach you as a kid in in Bible class and all that kind of thing about God and Satan and love and hatred and all that sort of thing. Everything comes from Meher Baba. He is the source. He's the main one. Everything comes from him. And it also helped when I read it, what he said about us being in a dual world and good being the highest degree of evil and evil the lowest degree. It all comes from him. And I got that awareness, that knowledge. Now, another thing is that, remember I said I was going to stay for 3 days, so they kept my passport. And every time I passed through, the trust office, I would ask for the passport and it wouldn't be back. It wouldn't be ready. So on this particular day, I passed, and that was the day that Indira Gandhi was shot. By the end of the day, Indira Gandhi was dead. And there were riots in Ahmednagar and all the village, all the towns around. And we were sequestered in the Pilgrim Center, quarantined, couldn't go anywhere for 2 weeks. And the only place you could go was up the hill and down again, up and around. It was in that period that I think Meher Baba gave me a crash course, because I had a whole lot of experiences at that point. One, one was, I think it was on a Monday, the 12th of the month. The women would come to lay wreaths on Baba's tomb. And well, I was there with the other Baba lovers looking on. And the girls called me and told me Meher wanted me. So I went, and she kept me by her side and went into the tomb with her. And they had these wreaths like blankets. just flowers, but in huge blankets. And she was here. I was next to her, and all the other ladies were there, and we placed several of those wreaths on. Now, don't let me tell you what it felt like. Remember, I told you that but from the time I went to Heather's house the first day, I had this strange feeling. Well, that strange feeling was heightened umpteen times. And then I realized it was vibrations. Vibrations, positive vibrations, of course, that you're feeling. And you feel those sweet vibrations when you're in the tomb with her. At least I did. So that happened, and I thought I had done my job, and I went to sit down. They called me again. Come, we haven't finished. So we went to the Gadi, and she, did what she had to do in the Gadi, and she explained to me that this is where Baba used to rest, during whatever time it was, and so on. And then they took me to the East Room. You know that room under the water tank where the ladies used to live at a certain point in time. And down in the East Room, on all the walls were just chock-a-block with pictures of Meher Baba in different phases of his life. And she would hold my hand and she'd say, Jocelyne, you see that picture of Meher Baba? That's when he was 12 years old. Isn't he cute? And then she goes and she says, that is when he was in the new life. That is what... And when I thought that that was enough, she got the girls to go into the trunks. There are lots of trunks around, and take out all kinds of little artifacts and things that they had made during their time. Not they, she had made during their time with Meher Baba, and to show it to me. But that wasn't all. I never forget this one. There's a thing on two sticks with a hammock and Baba's face in there, cut out from a picture photograph. And there's a parrot somewhere at the top. And she did like this. She said, Jocelyne, Baba used to like us to sing a lullaby to him before he went, to put him to sleep. Why don't you sing a lullaby for Baba? By then I was taught, I couldn't believe what I was hearing, but I had to sing. So I found some lullaby and sang it. But by then I was totally stoned after all of that. And that was one of the experiences at the beginning. La 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 da 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 da. I didn't know the words, so I had to lullaby la la. That's the first thing that came to me. I think that's a Brahms lullaby or something like that. There were no words. I used to play it as a kid on the piano. And so that came to me, and I won't forget it. But so after that, I was loving everybody, and you go into to eat in the Pilgrim Center. I don't even know people, and they look at me, and I'm hugging them up, and so on. I had a series of experiences while I was there, and that continued for the 2 weeks until we left. The last day that I went to Meherazad, for instance, there's a fruit called sitafal. The sitafal is like sugar apple. It's green, it's got these ridges and just seeds, and you take them out and you eat the seeds, and it's delicious now. But I hated it at the time. I couldn't stand the sight of it. And my friend Heather loved it. So she would go all over the center looking for the cetafal fruit. And I would just turn my nose up of it, at it. But I was lying, reading something one day at Meherazad. And one of the ladies came, shouting my name, asking for me. And when I looked, she had a tray of the cetafal. Most of them, all of them cut in half except for one. She said, Meheras sends a cetafal for the ladies. Half for each lady, a whole one for Jocelyne. I was made to eat that thing. And since then, I eat it. I just love it. But it just that period in itself did a whole lot to me. When we finally were able to go into Ahmednagar, for instance, Baba's pictures continue to talk to me. We finally were able to go into Ahmednagar, and I was feeling good. So we went into the bookstore, myself and Heather, and we were looking at the books. And all of a sudden I said, Heather, I want to buy you a gift. And she says, well, since when you get so generous all of a sudden? And she was buying something. And I said, I'll get that for you. And she kept moving to the cash register, but I got my money out first and I paid for it. And as I did, my eyes looked up and there was a picture of Baba up above, and it did like this. Those pictures speak to you. Or I'd be sitting down, probably, I think at one point I was crying in the, it wasn't in the tomb, it was in the tin shed. And I looked up and the hand did like this. Tears gone. Immediately. No, I had a lot of little experiences like that over the 2 weeks, and in addition to which, we had people like Bao and Balnatu and those come and talk to us about Meher Baba. There were lots of films that was shown, and I had a crash course, so that by the time I left India, I was a Baba lover, and I have been ever since. That's my story. Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai. Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai. Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai. My friend Heather from Geneva. Heather Nadell was very, very nice to me, very caring on that first day. She'd come every 2 minutes to find out how I'm doing, want to offer me soup, I'll never forget that. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, yeah, but that was in the year I met Michaela, when we were invited to lunch. No, I was invited to lunch. I came out of Mandalay Hall, and I was putting on my shoes, and some of these women, they were the Indian women around, turned and said, "Oh, you're playing with you're playing with your feet. You better not go and touch any of those Baba things in Baba's room if you go into Baba's room. Mehera wouldn't like that. You better wash your hands," just like that. And again, you know, the authoritativeness that's usually in that in those voices. So I left, put on my shoes, and I started to walk to the back to go to Baba's room. And something says, you know, why don't you just wash your hands and be done with it? So there was a standpipe there, and I washed my hand. And then I heard somebody shouting, "Where's Jocelyne? Jocelyne, Meherazad wants Jocelyne." And when I got there, Meherazad said, I wanted to invite you to eat at Baba's table, to share a meal at Baba's table. And so I sat down and, you know, we were eating and talking um, and then Baba came into the room. And how did we know? The vibrations were of somebody coming into the room and walking slowly with difficulty, as if the person, you know, were Baba in pain, and walking slowly. And as he entered the room, the vibrations increased and increased and increased until they filled the entire room. And it's almost as if every cell in your body was filled with these vibrations. And nobody talked, but I figured I had to say something to make sure that I'm still there. And I said, "Oh, he's here with us now." And Meherazad said, oh yes, he's always here. He's he's always with us. And I was like, it made me exhausted after a while. You know, those positive vibrations that, you know, I don't know what they do, but they make you want to sleep, you know. But I don't know if Michaela would remember this. We were sharing a room at the same time. And the day before that, she had gone somewhere and came back. And she wouldn't say a word to me. She was very withdrawn and so on. So I left her, you know, she fell asleep and so on. So when the next day was when I was invited to lunch, and I came back and I was feeling the same way. I didn't want to speak to anybody. I just wanted to lie down and sleep. And when I woke up, I told her what happened, and she'd had a similar experience. Um, Not necessarily with Baba coming into the room, but just being with Mehera and, you know, feeling Mehera's love and receiving a gift from her and and that sort of thing. That was just before she got married. And you know, it just went to show some of the strength of the love and the, the positiveness of Baba that he lent to occasions like those, you know. So that is what that one was about. My husband knew about Meher Baba through me, and he never let on, or he never admitted that he was a Baba lover. We were married for 27 years, and early in the marriage, we'd gone to India and we'd visited the tomb. He'd been in there and all of that, but he never did really share the depth of the connection that he might have felt at that point. When we'd have Barbara pictures in the house, but when friends came and they asked who's that in the picture, he'd say, "Oh, that's my wife's thing, you know, ask her, ask her." Then he got ill and he was in the hospital. And a couple of days before he died, the nurse told me that he wanted to speak with me. There were some Baba pictures that I had put in the hospital room. And the nurse always wanted to know who the person in the picture was. And at that point, my husband was on his way out, he was traveling. And he couldn't speak. He never spoke in sentences or so um, he was barely awake. And the nurse said he asked him, "Who is that man in the picture?" And Colin, my husband, said, "That's Meher Baba. I follow him." And he died some hours later. So I knew that he was in good hands. I didn't have to worry at all about it after that. That was really amazing. Yeah. That's that story. My relationship with Meher Baba today, I'm holding on as tight as Snoopy. Holding on to that Daman because I know he's with me and I know he's with all of us. Whether he tunes up the vibrations or he tunes them down, he is always there. I know he's always with me. Like, for instance, when I was working, I did a lot of work in remote communities. As I was in media and communication, and we did a lot of it, of encouragement of community radios. And in this particular instance, I was in Suriname. That's on a former Dutch colony on the northern coast of South America. And in Suriname, like a lot of other places, which had a history of slavery, they're what you call the Maroons. They were slaves that escaped from plantations and went far into the interior and set up their own communities. And the government had asked us to help them to set up a community radio in one of those communities. It was really remote. Once you took a plane and you got to the capital city, and then from there you got into a tiny canoe and you sailed 3 hours up a river, up the Surinamese River, to this particular place. And the radio was being run by women because the men would go into town to work and come back and impregnate the women and then leave again. So the women had to do everything. So it was being run by women. We were met by women and so on. And I had to stay overnight in a cabin, in a hammock. Now, when I was there, I tried to sleep. I had difficulty falling asleep. And when I finally fell asleep, I saw like there were people, things, or something. You know what it looks like in the tomb, those paintings in the tomb, that kind of thing. People looking over the shoulder at each other, looking over the shoulder and trying to get to see you. And I also felt that some of them wanted to get at me for some reason or other, and some were looking at me as if to say, "Now what she's doing here?" And I was scared. And then I looked up, and there he was. That was the position. He's, that look, and he was looking at me, as if to say, "You're okay. They can't touch you." And I woke up after that. The next morning, the elders in the village asked me, "How did you sleep?" I said I slept very well, except that I thought I had some visits. They said, "Yes, we know we have work to do on that mound." It was a mound.
Oh.
It was a hill, but to me now I realize it's a mound. It was a hill. And there was lots of things going on there. and Baba was with me. So I'm telling you, he's always there. He's with you, he's with me. It's just we can't see him, but he turns it up and turns it down. Coming here, coming here. Also, I had a lot of problems, like I get to the airport and I'm told I'm not on the list of the reservation. I don't have a reservation. I took a deep breath and I remember the Mandali telling me, leave it all to Baba. Leave it to Baba. Just repeat his name. Leave it to him. Which is what I did. And each time I felt some anxiety, I took a deep breath and I left it all to him. And he worked it out. And I got in, I got the flight to Columbia, South Carolina. Leaving South Carolina was something else. Leaving Columbia too was something else. I came on Greyhound. I arrived at Greyhound, the office is closed. Then the bus was about an hour and a half late. Again, leave it to Baba. Leave it to Baba. And as I was thinking that, there was a total stranger that looked at me when I said, "Oh, this bus is better not go. It had better not go and leave me." He says, "No, it won't leave you. You are blessed." A total stranger in at the Greyhound station in Columbus. So he's there. He's there all the time, you know. And here am I. Jai Baba. What I like is that he's been guiding my path quite a bit. When I was leaving Meherazad the first time, Erich and those told them told told the Baba lovers who were there to give me Anita VAR's coordinates so that when I left and I got back to Paris, I'd give her a call, which I did. And she was so excited to hear my voice. She says, "Oh my gosh, this is like a Babagram. And how were the girls?" And she asked me all sorts of questions about being there because she hadn't been there in so long. And I think she and Roger were about to make a trip there. And then when she came back, she had a party for Meher Baba's birthday and introduced me to a whole lot of Baba lovers in Paris. So, and I had been close to Anita since then until she died. Yeah. No, I had left by the time she got ill. But Anne was close to her, Anne who lives in the house right now. And there were others around, but she didn't have a whole lot of very close Baba lovers there in Paris. There was also Dagmar Lee that was there at the time.